Hello and welcome to Optimum Derby Live. My name is Martin Crowson. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by Tom Heeley, the Managing Director of Optimum Derby. Tom, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are we?
We're good, thank you. We are focusing on ankle injuries today. It's the start of a 4-week special program we've got for football injuries. So if you're a footballer getting back into the swing of things with a new season and you've picked up an injury or you're keen to avoid an injury in the coming weeks, please stay tuned with us over the next 4 weeks. We've got 4 different topics coming up. You can check our socials to see what they are. But today it's how to recover from an ankle injury in football. And if you've got an ankle injury at the start of the season and it's keeping you on the sidelines while your teammates are training and playing, we all know how frustrating that is. Tom's here to offer some ideas and tips about how to recover from them and how to guard against ankle injuries in the future. Tom, you've got a fantastic CV working with football clubs for starters. So just give us a rundown of the sort of experience you've got in dealing with the injuries we're going to be talking about today and over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, I guess it probably first started when I first left university. So it started, whilst I was still at uni, actually, started working at Notts County between sort of second and third year at uni, and then went on sort of after that, kind of continued an internship for a full season after I graduated, and then just filtered into football from there. So that was Notts County and then Derby County currently, and work with the FA and Sheffield United and some other clubs as well. So continued work with the PFA as current and still at Derby County at the minute. So seen a lot of ankles kind of run of the mill, should I say, in terms of football injuries. It's quite common, quite an injury that most players will have probably sustained at some point in their career, some sort of an ankle injury. And then some of the other topics that we've got to discuss the next 3 or 4 weeks. So it's a common area of concern.
Before we get stuck into it, if you've got any questions, you're watching us today and you have got any questions, please feel free to stick them in the comments box while we're live. And if we see any pop up, we'll do our best to answer them. If not, and something comes to you afterwards, again, please put them in the comments section, and Tom will do his best to get around to them after we've finished. Okay, let's crack on, Tom. I know it sounds a bit of a stupid question, but there's plenty going on down in that area. How do you know you've got a specific injury related to the area in and around the ankle?
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of bones, there's a lot of tendons, a lot of muscles, and also a lot of ligaments as well. So trying to sometimes figure out what the area is that's injured comes down to questioning. So what we'll often do is ask the simple questions: how did it happen? When did it happen? I mean, if you're pitch side, you've probably seen some of this already and got a good idea of what might have already occurred during the game or training session. But let's say this was in the clinic and I wasn't at the game or the training, then it will be a question of, how did it happen? Which kind of gives us a good indication. Where did it happen? What sort of movement were you doing? And then what's the swelling and what's it feel like now? Maybe 2, 3, 4 days later post-injury. And that would lead us down a route of ligaments, which are commonly your lateral ligaments. So the ones on the outside.
Just pull this diagram up, Tom.
That's perfect. Yeah. So
what's going on there, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, so you can see you've got the kind of the 2 bones of the leg. So on the left-hand side of the picture, you've got the fibula, the slightly longer one but skinnier one, and then the sort of the chunkier one, you've got the tibia, and then that feeds down into the foot and the ankle, and then leads down into your toes. And if you can imagine from that skinny bone on the outside, sort of to round the ankle there, you've got 3 main ligaments called your lateral ligaments, and typically you roll your ankle in that direction, and you can damage one of those 3 or all of those 3, depending on the severity and the position of the foot. Less likely to injure the ligaments on the inside, just because of the nature and the bony nature of the foot itself and the leg itself. You're less likely to roll the foot the other way, and for the little toes to sort of rise up in the air, you're more likely to kind of come into this position, and big toe sort of falls up in the air and comes high. So
I guess that's one of the most common injuries, not only in football, but I mean, there are a few people today who haven't rolled their ankle at some stage doing whatever sport, down a curb, stepping up things. It's so common, isn't it?
Yeah, super common. And that's not football related at all. That could be anything. Typically a lot in football, just from nature of things. Kind of even something the other day was I saw somebody the other day and he was running out of possession of the ball. Somebody passed the ball and he wasn't even really trying to block the ball. He was just running alongside somebody, and the weight of the ball just nudged against him as he was about to plant his foot on the floor, and that just rolled his ankle. So as simple as that. It's not even necessarily the change of angle or the change of position or a tackle. Just the position of the ball hit him just at the wrong moment and turned his foot, and then he sort of landed with an upturned foot and rolled his ankle and his ligaments from there. So, and then you've also got things like calf strains, which you could probably classify into that area. So again, that's more likely to be a push-off motion. So maybe going to accelerate or to sprint and hit top speed, and you can injure or pull a muscle in your calf. Gastrocnemius or soleus, depending on sort of how your movement is and what sort of stage you are of running. And that's quite common as well. Probably less bruising, pain in a different area, difficulty going up and down on your toes, but probably something that's a little bit more comfortable maybe to walk on than a ligament injury. Different timescales in terms of repair and healing, and different ways of managing that from a rehab point of view as well. And then the other kind of like main area I would suggest is probably a bony injury, and that could be a fracture. So it could be a full fracture, a full break, or it could be a stress fracture from an significant increase in load during a short period of time. And that additional stress on the bone causes the bone to almost fissure rather than almost kind of completely break apart.
Okay. There's a hell of a lot going on down there and a lot to diagnose. You wanted to talk about the Ottawa Scale today.
Yeah.
Something I'd never heard of before today. So explain a little bit more about it and why is that important or helpful?
Yeah, the Ottawa Scale is really useful. I think if you were to watch this video now and you were kind of questioning, how bad's my ankle or how bad's my foot, and do I need to seek any more advice, or do I need to go to the hospital, or what do I need to do really? Have a dig out of the Ottawa Scale. Ottawa Scale is really useful. It's a image, and it's also got some points down the side, and it pinpoints areas of pain. So it would pinpoint particular sort of pain around the fifth metatarsal, so that's on the outside of the foot near your little toe. It will highlight things like, can you weight bear? If you can't weight bear, what to do about it. So the Ottawa Scale is something I'd keep in mind if you're thinking about what should I do next? Do I need an X-ray, and do I need any more significant sort of advice or treatment? And if you tick some of those markers, head to A&E, get yourself X-rayed, and then just to rule out some fractures, and then from there it's just a matter of managing it, and you can rule out the fractures, and then it's either a ligament injury or a muscular injury from there.
Yeah, we've got someone there that most people watching will know, Harry Kane there, struggling from an ankle injury. Is that the sort of thing that they would use even at the top level of football? Yeah,
that's something that's kind of up on a changing room door, or maybe not in the changing room, but like in a medical room, it would be up somewhere, just as a reference point. One for yourself and also for the players, just to kind of remind you kind of little things that to warrant what to do next, really, and where to push things next. And again, that's kind of an indication, like you said there, Harry Kane's known for having ankle injuries, and that's one of the big things. Like once it happens once, you want to try and get on top of it as best you can to avoid it from recurring. Even if it's something that's not a long injury, the recurrence can be an issue, really. Keeps you out of your sport, keeps you time away from the grass. And a hindrance to the manager, the squad, the coach that can't pick you, basically.
And with that in mind, tell us about the processes involved in actually a safe return to football we're talking about today, but other sports as well. And the dangers of coming back too early, I guess, will lead to the recurrences that you've just been speaking about.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you've got the opportunity to work within a club and they've got some great facilities and pieces of equipment, there's a lot of equipment that you can use to kind of try and reduce that risk of injury. And that might be measuring things like strength, or measuring distances with hopping, or measuring speeds on the grass, or how quick you're able to run, or can you repeat things many times without sort of fatiguing. So they're like quite high-end piece of equipment. But in simple terms, it kind of goes back to some basics, really. For a proper assessment, so a proper assessment and diagnosis to know exactly what we're dealing with, and also how's best to manage that. Then it's about managing pain and swelling. So again, try and reduce the swelling, because that's going to have an impact onto the pain levels, and also going to impact range of movement. If you consider the ankle is a joint that's made up of many bones, around that area, and there's not a lot of space. It's not maybe like a hip where there's a little bit more space for fluid to sit.
Yeah.
If you imagine putting a pillow or a cushion in the doorway and then trying to shut the door, you're just going to come up against resistance. And that's the same sort of issue you'll have around most joints. Ankles probably a little bit worse. And again, with gravity, fluid just happily sits there. It just drains away and just sits in the ankle and the foot. So trying to get that up and trying to get that elevated as best as possible. And then to optimally load. So it's perfect. Things like isometrics are a great way of strengthening the area in a safe manner. Might be returning back to walking. So walking with or without crutches. You might need a boot at the early stages. And then from there on, returning back to normal walking patterns, good balance, good strength. And you can use within football, what we would do is we would measure left versus right or previous scores from pre-testing in the pre-season testing in the summer, just to evaluate where the athlete is at and what specifics we need to work on to make sure they're ready to get back on grass. And a lot of those things we would do the same in the clinic. We do them in a different way. We have certain pieces of equipment which we'll use, which are very similar to what we'd use in football, and use those same methods of how to return back safely, following a good, strict sort of rehab protocol, ticking all the boxes and making sure we're not really skipping any stages.
Yeah, Man City training room there, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they've got a lot of. You can see a few machines on the left-hand side. I think he's cut the bottom of the picture off, but basically, like, he's hopping and jumping and landing on a trampette. So landing on an unstable surface and then landing on a stable surface on his left-hand side, our left-hand side. And things like that, landing on unstable surfaces and getting good at that means that actually when you come to land on stable surfaces, you're a lot more stable and you're a lot more secure. So things like this are great ways of training ankles, especially as their first contact. They're the first contact with the ground. So training in that matter and getting good at being uncomfortable or being unstable means that when you become on a stable surface, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. While you're making that progress back from your ankle injury, is there anything else you can do away from football whilst you are recovering from that can help?
Yeah, 100%. Like you've got to think that maybe you might be limited from the knee down, and you might be limited just from the ankle down. The calf you might still be able to focus on, and in which case then there's a lot of things you can continue working on. So it might be things like leg extensions, leg curls, hip thrusts. You might have to modify your squat a little bit. You might have to modify your deadlift a little bit, but there's still a lot of things to consider. And I would say try those things rather than just rule them out straight away. Consider your normal gym routine, your normal program, and then rule the things out once you've had a go and once you've considered trying to do it, rather than go the other way and just take them out altogether and wait till your ankle's better, because then you have to build everything back up from scratch again, and that takes ages. In
short, be aggressive up to up to a certain stage.
Absolutely, and that's where I feel like we can help quite a lot and advise on what's the things to keep doing and what's the things to leave out, and what modifications to maybe make and swap in or swap out. So from a deadlift point of view, we might modify that slightly to kind of still continue to do that. We might do a slightly different exercise. And again, from a cardio point of view, there's loads to do. There's loads to still do. For example, a seated ski erg, seated battle ropes, assault bikes, just the arms, pool work. If you've got access to an Alter-G treadmill, amazing, but that's not always accessible. Watt bike sessions. There's loads to still maintain from a CV point of view, so you don't have to return to build that back up again. Keep things as high as you can for as long as you can, and work on the ankle stuff or the specific injury stuff in the background.
Yeah. Okay. While you're on, a question that's always been asked to me in the past, or we've discussed it with friends, and that's if you break your ankle, or you like to have a longer spell out than if you tear ankle ligaments. People always said to me, I've done my ligaments, you'd be better breaking it because you'd be back.
Yeah, funny discussion. Yeah, to be honest, a routine break is probably easier to manage because it's got some set time frames and you can scan it and x-ray it pretty easily, and it's obvious to see whether it's healed or not healed. And when it heals, it's healed. You know, it's solid, and it returns back to probably a stronger state than it was before.
Yeah.
Ligaments are probably a little bit more complicated. They go through different phases of sort of maturing and different phases of sort of returning back to full strength. And that's not very easy to scan, not very easy to test. It's more based on time frames, severity of injury, and pain and sensation, which is less easy to know when to push it. And also it goes through a phase of maturing, and as it does, the ligaments maybe go from being sort of married up in sort of that format, so all the ligaments and all the structures of that line up really well, to then some sort of damage or tear. But then when they repair a little bit like that. So they repair kind of crisscrossed and shorter.
Okay.
So that then becomes fragile, that section there, and becomes quite what's the word I'm looking for? Quite rigid and quite sort of brittle. Whereas the bone, once it's knitted, it's knitted. So in theory, the bone's probably an easier one to manage because once it's healed, it's healed.
And you can understand why with what you just said as well.
Yeah. I think that probably analogy kind of helps a little bit to understand and kind of how those ligaments kind of cross over, and the tissues within the ligament kind of repair a little bit haphazard rather than just return back to a straight line structure. Yeah.
We just finished on with a picture here from 100 meters sprint. Just talk us through some of the things that fantastic illustration of what our ankles actually go through.
Yeah, and this is obviously quite an extreme example, but these guys are top of the tree and pushing things to the absolute limit in terms of what their bodies can do. And again, in football, there's a lot of high speed running, a lot of sprints, and obviously a lot of change of directions. Something that these guys don't do a lot of is change of direction. But you can see sort of the picture from the left-hand side, the Italian Jacobs through to Noah Lyles in the middle, and even over towards, I can't quite see who that is on the far side. I think the guy with the orange boots, the orange Nike shoes, the far side. Different stance, different elements of their running position. So Jacobs on the left-hand side, he's very much toe, heels just off the floor, and that's something you'll often see in sprinting. So it's a position that we'll focus a lot on in the gym, rehabilitation-wise. There's a lot of toe-based exercises and being front foot and being on your toes, because there's going to be very few times that your heel's going to come close to the floor or even touch the floor.
It always seems to me like they're just kissing the surface, guys that run really quickly in 100 meters. It's almost like gliding. It's so fantastic to watch.
So true. And like, funny, have you ever seen some of the nature programs where those lizards run across water? Yeah, it literally makes me think of that every time, just like tip, and like hardly touching the floor. And then the guy from Botswana, Tobago, you can see sort of he's just about to leave the floor, I think, on his right foot there. So I'm not quite sure if that's touching or not quite touching, but again, he's just at the latter stages of pushing off through there. You've obviously got Noah Lyles in the middle, USA, who's completely off the floor, neither foot, but you can see how long his stride is and how much he's pushing through. And then you can imagine how much that right foot's got to accept when it hits the floor. And then right down to sort of the other end, the orange Nike spikes, where he's kind of just about to leave the floor again, but you can see that power and push through he's got through there, and almost a straight leg position. So there's a lot to consider with the landing mechanics, sort of that acceptance of force through the middle of the foot, and then to push off with your toes. So we spend a lot of time working on those three elements, again, with returning back to obviously a running sport, and a sport where you spend a lot of time on your feet.
Okay, if you've enjoyed watching today, kind of push you in the direction of a couple of other videos, folks, that we've done in recent weeks. One is another common injury related to the ankle, how to fix a torn Achilles tendon. Have a check on our YouTube channel at that one. A very serious one further up the leg. If you've ever done an ACL, you might be interested in this one. And then for the rest of us who just like to get playing on five-a-sides or Sundays or Saturdays, whenever you're back from injury, are you ready to play again? A bit of a more general look at recovery times from injuries. Thanks very much for joining us today. It just leaves me to say, if you want to find out more about Optimum Derby, check our website out, which is at the bottom of the screen right now. As I've already said, we've got plenty on YouTube, all sorts of sporting injuries to check out. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll be first to find out when we're on again. And if you want to get in touch with Tom and book yourself for an appointment at the clinic, you can either give Tom a bell or email him on the address, which is again at the bottom of the screen at the moment. Tom, very easy to get in touch. Ankle injuries, all sorts.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, get in touch. Yeah, no, there's a couple of guys I'm just thinking about now who've just been in touch recently and kind of training for marathons and stuff, and yeah, started with an ankle that's can't run much more than 1,500 meters, and I think yesterday he ran 5K. So in 10 days we've gone from 1,500 meters to 10K, 5K, and then just progress on from there. So I think I'm catching up with him early next week. So again, we'll progress the exercise and move things on.
Fantastic. Okay, Tom, thanks for joining us. It's been fascinating. Thanks very much for your time, as always. Folks, thank you very much for watching us. We're back Tuesday next week at 4 o'clock with the next session in our football injuries month-long special. So please join us then. We look forward to seeing you then. Thanks for joining us today here on Optimum Derby. Bye-bye for now.